Hi guys, I'm going to take you through that exercise that we started on today in class, looking at records, arrays of records, so data structures again. You'll remember that a record is a way of aggregating different fields that logically represents an object. We're also going to look at functions and also some little widgets, some of these cool little widgets over here that we've got. Now, there's a few. You can put your cursor over and have a look at them or look them up online, but I'm going to use a combo box. You'll recognize it when you see it. It gives us a drop-down list of items that we can select from. And the cool thing about that is it takes away the necessity to guess if you're searching for somebody's name. And I'm also going to put a label in there as well on there just to display some data that's sourced on the basis of the name that's selected. Better rename those. So where's the name? Up here. So if I go to the name, just rename the label to LBL mean, I think it is. I'm going to show, and also with this one, CMB BX names. You can come up with your own nomenclature, your own naming scheme if you like. That works for me. It's pretty ugly, but it works. Now, I'm going to come back into the code behind now, and that's in form 1. So there it is. Now, I've already copied the data in there. If you look at the way this is structured, the idea is that the last names of people, that's the first name. So Logan Rona, these are random names. That's her or his ID number and the marks that they got in maths and English. And the idea is that the records are created vertically, 0, 1, 2, and so on. What we're going to do is we're going to pack those into a student record. So first thing I'm going to do is create a record. So student record. So I'm going to create a record that we can actually use. Now, to create a record, one way in C# is use the struct keyword and then give it a name, student record, and then a pair of curly brackets. And inside here is where we put the fields. Struct is short for structure. So these fields have to be public so we can access them via the dot operator. So I've got some strings, string name last, then I've got public string name first. I actually probably, in good programming practice, is to put that prefix in front of them. So I should do it. I don't usually do it myself, but probably should. I missed that semicolon there. And then what have I got? Public string ID, strid num, and then we've got public one that's actually not one of the data fields. This is actually a constructed field, and it's going to be formatting of the name. So if I do, I'm going to call it string name display. Oops, I've got to put the type in there. Useful. And then I've got a couple of public int, sorry, maths and public int English. And then we've got another created field that will actually work out, we'll calculate public float mean. All right, there we go. So there's our structure. And it contains 4 strings representing the student's last name, first name, ID number, display name, 2 integers to represent marks in maths and English, and a float that represent the mean of those 2 marks. I mean, it's pretty simple. Okay, what we want to do is we want to actually load the data. So I'm going to create a function to do that. you want the data to load when the form first starts up, and this is the constructor. This is what's called first. This actually, as it says, initializes all the components and things like that. We're actually going to do that in there so that when the form first shows up, it's got the data loaded. But I'm going to create a function called void load data, and the idea is that later on, instead of using in-app data such as this, we're going to actually load that from a database, and we'll just change this method, and everything else will be exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare an array of student records. Now the syntax is exactly the same as if we're declaring an array of integers. We've got to give the type, and student record is a type. We've declared it there, so it's a type, square brackets, and I'm going to call it students. There we go. Now, I've just declared it there. I haven't given it any memory. What I'm going to do now is give it the memory down inside here. Students equals new. We use the new keyword. And then student record. Whoops, I'm using a Mac, I forgot. Student records. Student record, square bracket. Now I could give it a fixed size, but if I don't know how many there are, so I'm just going to do name last dot length. I'm assuming that all of those arrays are exactly the same size. They should be. And there we go. So that's where I'm going to actually put my student records when I create them. So now I'm going to use a for loop because I have to go through each item in the arrays. If there are 100, I go through 100 times and I make 100 student records. So what are we going to do? We're going to use a for loop. For int I equals 0. Try that again. Equals 0. I is less than students, the number of students we've got in our array, students dot length I plus plus. There we go. So there's our for loop that's going to traverse through every student we've got. What we need to do now is literally make a student array. So I'm going to do student record, and I'm just going to declare one. The record equals new, just making one record, student record. There we are. Right, that makes a student record. Now what we need to do is populate that one. It's underlined green because I haven't used it yet. It's not an error. So what I want to do is go in and pack student's last name, first name, ID num, create a display name, its math mark, English mark, and work out the mean. So now I'm just going to do this, the record dot, and because I've made these records public, I can get to them. You can see them there. I'm going to put in name last. Name last. There we are. And I'm going to set that to be equal to the ith item in the last names array. So name last, and it's an array, I. So as I starts off being equal to 0, it goes and gets the first name there, Rona, and sticks it in to the name last, string name last field of the record. Now I've got to repeat that with all the others, so you can go ahead and do that. The record dot str name first equals, now I get that from the name first array, the ith item of that. There we go. And the record dot str id num equals id num array I. All right, and math, the record dot math equals, go to the math array, oops, beg your pardon, it's gone to the math class, maths, sorry, I. All right, and then the record dot English equals, go to the English array and get the ith item of that. Ah, you idiot. Ah, I have used a capital there. Beg your pardon, that's why. So I've got to get rid of that capital, sorry. English, and then I, that was Word correcting it for me when I made it. All right, there we go. So so just make that change up there. So make sure it's lowercase. All right, so I've created those. Now there are two constructed fields in there, and there's display name. So I'm going to create a display name, and the display name is simply going to be reverse order. So it's going to be last name, comma, first name. So the record dot str name display equals, and I'm just going to join the two strings together. So it's going to be name last I, plus, and then I'm going to put in a string that contains a comma and a space, and then add to that. You can just use the addition sign to join strings together. Name first I. Right, there we go. And then I've got to work out the float. Calculate mean. Mean of marks. Now this is pretty poorly designed, but it's okay. It's just a simple toy app. Now, it'd be really nice if we had a function to do that. So what I'll do is I'll quickly create a, let's come down here, and we'll write a function that does that for us. So let's do, if we're going to get a mean value back of 2 marks, it's got to be returning a floating type. We know that, so we've done that enough. So it's going to be float. And let's call it get mean. Right, and what we'll need to give it to get the mean is we'll need to give it the record. So we're going to give it a student record because that's where it's got to get the marks from. And we'll just call it the record. Okay, there we go. And curly brace, enter. Right, now it's underlined red because it doesn't actually return, pardon me, a value at the moment. Okay, well the 2 marks that we want are contained inside the record, so we can easily get those. If we just do int, we just unpack it, same as we packed it, int English equals the record dot English. There we go. And int math equals the record dot math. All right, so we loaded it up here. Now we're just getting those two things out because we want to actually do something with them. Now you know the way to calculate that. It's just going to be float mean equals. We've got to turn these into floats because otherwise we'll get a whole number back. So we've got to do. Let's put in. Well, let's do this first. English. We'll put it in brackets. English plus math divided by 2. Yeah, it's pretty silly, but anyway. But these are both integers, so what we've got to do is add those together and turn it into a float. Now we could turn each of these into a float just by doing this. Remember, just put it through the filter and just say, hey, listen, now you're a float. It'll quite happily do that. That'll work. All right, so there we go. We've just typecast those. We've cast those from integers into floats, so that's all good. Now, finally, we've got to return the value. We said that we would give it back a float, so we just literally return mean. There we go. Now, the algorithm for all of this, and in fact, most of the code is already on OneNote, although I probably have the variable names not exactly the same, but that's okay. All right, so now we can actually use that. So we can come over here and do the record dot mean equals. Now, get mean will calculate it for us, so let's use it. Get mean, there it is, there's our thing. And if we put the bracket in there, it's saying, hey, listen, it needs a student record. Well, we've got one, it's the record, so let's give it the record. That's the one we're currently working with, and there we go. So what we've done is we've passed the record that we've created here, the record, we've packed it all up. We're giving it to get mean, so it comes down into here, unpacks it, calculates the mean for us, gives us back the mean, and we store it in the record again. Convoluted, but it's a good way to do it. So now, so we've got our data, so let's actually test that and see what happens. So I'm going to actually call load data from inside my, my constructor, form1 initialize component. I'm going to put in here, load data. There we go, or data, not data, data, load data. So now if I, let's put a debug point there, and we'll see what we've got after we've loaded that. So just click in there, run it, and please work. Waiting. Still waiting. Okay, so if we have a look now inside our students, here's our students there, we can see that it's saying, right, it's saying there, I shift the cursor, it's saying that it's got 100 records, and there's all our records in there, and each one is a student record. So if I put it over there, you can see, that's not good, got nothing there. Oh, because I didn't, we've got all the records there, but there's nothing in there. All of the English, math, and mean are set to 0, and all of the strings are set to null. And the reason is I didn't put anything in there. So after I've created that record, I've actually got to store it in my array. So students I equals the record. Now I've got to stop it. Let's run it again. And this time it'll work. Guaranteed. Come on. Don't know what that's doing. Now let's stop that. Oh no, seems to have done it, so I don't know what was up to there. But anyway, let's go and have a look what we've got in our students record. Alright, so there it is. And if I put it over, there you go. So Charles, Long Charles, there's his math marks and the mean for what he got. Okay, and all of these will just contain different data. There we are, I hope. Huff Wang, where do these names come from? Gonzalez Kira. There we go. So that's all good. So now what we want to do is actually display those names inside our combo box. That's pretty easy. That's so once we've loaded the data there, once we've loaded that data, I'm just going to actually then load the form, load the name. So let's do this. Load, beg your pardon, void load combo box. That'll do. And to load the combo box is pretty easy. All I need to do is go through every one of those records and add the display name to the combo box. So, you know, for loop, an iteration, int, beg your pardon, int I equals 0, I is less than students dot length, however many I've got in the array of records, I plus plus. All right, there we go. So I'm just traversing through every one of the student records. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the display name. Name equals, oh, beg your pardon, that's not going to work. I've got to go and get the record, haven't I? Student record, the record. Same deal, but this time I'm getting it out of the array. I packed it into the array. Now I'm going to get it out. Equals students I. So go and get every record in turn. Get the first one, the 0th one, the first one, and so on. Right, now the record dot string display name display. There we are. There we go. Got it. So now I've stored that, taken it out of the record, and packed it into there. So now I can go and do this. CMB box names dot items. Get the items from there. That's as it says. Says gets an object representing the collection of the items contained in the combo box. Well, guess what? There's strings. Items dot add one to it. What do I want to add? I want to add display name. There we go. Cool. Right, now, load combo box. When do I want to load the combo box? Well, I can't do it until after I've loaded the data. So load data and then load combo box. Okay, so these, you can see the way it's really cool just to use these little functions here. So, I can write the code somewhere else. So I've got three functions, one to load the combo box, one to get the mean, and one to make my student data to load the records. So now if I stop that, I should have stopped that earlier. And now run it again. Don't take that doc point out. All right, get rid of that. Continue, and let's have a look. All right, and there's all our names. I should have made that bigger, but that's cool, you can do that. And there's all our names. All right, now what we want to do is when we've selected one from there, we want it to show some data in the label, maybe the mean. So let's do that. So the way to do that is that objects, these objects have, I'll just make that bigger so we can see all the names next time. All right, objects have events attached to them. You know what the one was for a button, it was a click event. Well, for a combo box, there are a few, but if I have a look on the events here, to click on the events, you just click on the little lightning bolt there, and you can see that there's a whole lot of events that will do, tab index change, mouse up, mouse move, mouse, all the mouse events. There's a whole lot of them. It'll respond to all of those events, but the one that's most obvious is the one that's already selected for you. Selected index changed, and what happens? That gets fired when somebody clicks on an item in the box and makes that the visible one. So we're going to double click on that. All right, well, I actually could have just double clicked on here. So if I double click on there, double click on there, all right, what's going on here? All right, there it is there. So it's created it for me, just didn't dump me in it. All right, so there it is, combo box name, selected index change. Now, it has two arguments here. Sender is the object that sent the message. Now that's actually our combo box, and the event argz are all of the arguments that actually, the time it happened and things like that. But we're just interested in the sender. Which one sent it? Well, we know which one it is because we've only got one. That doesn't matter. So what we want to do is find out which name was actually selected. So let's do that. So it's going to be a string, isn't it? The name. Now this may not go so well for me. Let's do display name, str display name, and we're going to set that to be equal to the sender. Now the sender is an object. Now everything's an object. Now a combo box is an object, but it's a particular type of object, and what we have to do is turn it into the object that we want. So we're going to have to cast it again, the same as we cast an int into a float, same technique. So we're going to do this, sender, but I'm going to turn it into a combo box. Probably should have done that the other way, it'd be easier to do. So if I do this combo box, there it is, there's a combo box. So I'm going to put that in brackets, the same as we did with float. It's exactly the same syntax. And then I'm going to put sender. So I'm just going to put the sender through that. Now, we know that if it's a combo box, let me just, if it's a combo box, it's going to have some, I probably should do this. This would be easier for you. Let me get rid of that. So I'm going to do this combo box, the combo box. So we'll get the combo box. All right, there we are. All right, so now we've got a combo box. Now I'm going to actually go to the combo box, and we're going to get, now there are a whole lot of items there, but we're going to, which one are we interested in? We're interested in the selected index, selected item. What does that say? Selected item, currently selected item, selected text, gets us sets the text that is selected in the editable portion of the comment. We want this one. We want the item that's selected, right? And we from that, all right, we're going to turn that into a string. So you can actually, if I put that, well, you know how to do this. Let's do this. String str display name and equals. Well, you know how to turn it into that. We just use convert. Now there are other ways, but I'm going to be consistent with this. Dot to string. Now I'm hoping this works. Must have, but I haven't road tested it. All right, so there we go. There's a bit going on there. So we've got the sender. Now we know it's a combo box, but we've actually got to turn it into that. So we've put it through a filter, stored it in there. And then I've declared a variable called to hold the display name. And I've gone to the combo box, got the selected item, and turned it into a string by using the convert to string method. All right, so the logic's pretty easy, but let's actually see what happens. Let's see if this actually works. So now when I select one in here, you should see the event fire. All right, there it is. So it's fired down there. If I have a look in here, there it is, Charles Long. Okay, if I go back to my, I've got to continue on. Let's see if, I can't remember, but it was Charlie Long that we selected. Something's died there. Let's run it again. All right, let's notice which one we picked. Ruiz Huffer. Took the dot point out. So let's go back again. There it is. Let's select another one. Charlie Long. And we got Charlie Long. So that's working. So what do we do now? Well, now that we know who's been selected, we've actually got to go back to our array of records and search. Now, we can't use a binary search because they're not in alphabetical order. Had we put them in alphabetical order inside the data structure, that would have been cool but expensive. So we're just going to use a linear search. So we're just going to go through and find until we get a match. So that's not hard. Where are we? Here we are. So what we've got to do is we're just going to use a for loop. Again, we've got to go through every item for int I equals 0, I is less than students dot length. You must have seen this a million times already. I plus plus, but this is how you get good at it, seeing it lots of times. Okay, we've got to go through and search. Search for the selected name. All right, so we've got to match. Remember, records are matched on fields. So we've actually got to compare each record's display name. So we've got to get it off the student's record. So it's going to be student record, the record. You don't have to call it that, but it kind of works. Equals students I. So that gets every record one at a time from our student's data structure. Remember, it's an array, a one-dimensional array of student records. Now we've got to put in a selection. If the record dot str name display, oh, we got, all right, equals, I didn't think it, and equals our, the one that we've actually found. I probably should have thought of a better name for that, but that works. Well, we know that it's found a match. So we're just going to display the label mean label mean dot text equals the float from our student record. Now there's a problem with this mean. There we are. We've got the mean from there, but we know that that's a floating point number and that's a string, so we've got to convert. So use convert dot to dot to string brackets, and there we go. I'll run it. Let's see what happens. There we go. It's working. Good old Charlie Long. There we go. Oh, terrible student. So, look, there's not much to that. You can see that there's some sequence, there's some selection, there's some quite a few bits of iteration, quite a few loops in there. Most of it's to do with the setting up of our record up here, defining our record. So defining a template for our record. What a student record looks like, what fields it contains. We've got the data, but that's nothing. Right, and then declaring an array of student records to store each of the records in, and then it's going through a loop for each item in our data that we'll eventually read from a database and creating a record for each item. There it is there. Create a display name, get the mean for the marks inside that record, and then that record, stick it into the students array, stick it into this array here. And then there's just some little helper functions. Get the mean, takes a student record, unpacks it, gets the English mark, the math mark, does a bit of conversion there, converts the integers into floating point numbers, divides it by 2, actually that should have been 2f, 2f for a float, store the mean, return it. Now, load the combo box. All this does is go through every one of the students, unpacks them one at a time, gets the records from the students array, gets the display name, and uses the combo box items.add function to add the display to the list of items in the combo box. Finally, there's, I put this in the wrong place, I guess, doesn't really matter. There's the selected index change, so that when this event is fired, when you change the index or the selected item in the combo box, all it does is turn the sender, we know it's our combo box, into a combo box. It's an object there, so it's slightly different. It's a generic type, an object. This is a specific type. So then this is like a person. This is like the specific gender of the person. So what we do then is from the combo box, we get the item that's selected, that's the text, convert it to a string, that's all this does, converts the item to a string, sticks it in our string display name, and then we do a linear search. I'm going to put in that comment. Now, you'd know that a linear search is really ineffective for big data sets, but for 100, it's not going to matter at all. At most it's going to take 100 comparisons, on average 50 or thereabouts. And there's it. Load data, load combo box. And what we've got is our little app. The cool thing about this, if you think about it, is there's nothing can go wrong with these names. A user can't select the wrong name. You can't select long. You can't select somebody not in there. You just can't. I think I've got those names back to front, but if there you go. There's nothing else you can do. You can't select a wrong name. So we don't have to validate. We don't have to worry about if the user entering some ridiculous name that's not in there. I probably should have done something out of that, but there you go. Have a play with that. You might also want to, instead of just using one of those components, have an explore. We could have used in here. We could have used a checked list box. To select more than one item, you could have used a list box. That's all good. So have a go. So make sure you work through that over the weekend. Cool. See ya.